All right, today we're going to look at section 12.6. Which is solving by completing the square. All right, and our first thing that we need to talk about with this is this idea of the square root property. All right, and what the square root property says is if I have a problem, say, like this, x squared equals 4, okay? And I want to know what x equals here. Well, opposite operation of squaring something is the square root, all right? And this here is asking, so it's saying x squared equals 4. So it's asking what number can I square to equal 4, okay? So I'll take the square root of both sides here. Well, the square root of x squared is just x. But here's the interesting part. I take the square root of 4, which is 2. So yes, 2 squared equals 4. So that would work. But also negative 2 works. All right, so answers are x equals negative 2 and x equals 2, because negative 2 squared is also 4. And how we typically write this is we write x equals, we do plus minus 2. So we get both of those answers there, okay? So that's kind of our basic example here. Now, I can also have something like this. So let's say I have x minus 3 squared equals 9, okay? Again, I have something squared there. Just like in the last one, I just had x squared. Here we've got x minus 3 squared. So again, I can take the square root of both sides here. All right, on the left, I take the square root of x minus 3 squared, and I'm just left with x minus 3. On the right, I take the square root of 9. Well, the square root of 9 we know is 3, but I get that positive or negative, positive 3 or negative 3. And we'll write plus or minus. All right, now here I have x minus 3 equals plus or minus 3. So I get two separate equations out of this. We get x minus 3 equals 3, and x minus 3 equals negative 3. Now we can solve from here. Add 3, so I get x equals 6. And here, add 3 to both sides, and we get x equals 0. So my two solutions here are x equals 6 and x equals 0. All right, now let's see how this applies to a situation when we have to factor first. So we have the problem x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 25, okay? So I know this isn't in standard form, right? And my first idea that I would do here is to take that 25 and move it over to the left-hand side, all right? But also kind of looking at this, x squared plus 4x plus 4, all right? It looks like that can be factored into something where both sets of parentheses would be the same. So if I make my box here, all right, put my x squared here and my 4 here. So that's x times x for x squared. Okay, plus and plus 2 and 2. All right, so now I fill in these other boxes. 2x and 2x. And on the diagonal there, that gives me my 4x. So my two factors here are x plus 2 and x plus 2, which is the same as x plus 2 squared, still equal to 25. Now on this example, again, I can take the square root of both sides. On the left here, x plus 2 squared, that just leaves me with x plus 2. On the right, okay, 25, the square root, well, 5 squared and negative 5 squared are 25, so we get plus or minus 5, okay? So now we'll split this up again. X plus 2 equals 5, and x plus 2 equals negative 5. Solve each of these. Subtract 2. We get x equals 3. And subtract 2. We get x equals negative 7. Okay? So that's that square root property there. Okay, so now this next problem is going to get into why have we been talking about this, okay? This idea that we can take the square root of both sides, solving by taking square roots, all right? Well, it gets into this idea of being able to complete the square. So our example here is we have x squared minus 4x plus 2 equals 0, okay? And I want to solve this quadratic. Well, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I cannot factor this, okay? This is a quadratic that would be unfactorable, so I can't solve that way. I could plug it into Desmos, and it would give me answers, but like we talked about in class, this would give me very long, ugly decimal answers, and I would not be able to tell what the fractional or radical equivalent of that might be, okay? So that answer is not going to help me there. So we need to use this process of completing the square to be able to solve this quadratic. And completing the square can be used to solve any quadratic. So first thing I'm going to do is I want to take, well, let me write one other thing up here first. Let me write this standard form. So remember, standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay? So, first thing I would do, right, when solving by completing the square, is I would divide by a. I would divide all of these numbers by a. Right? Well, here, my a is simply 1. So if I divide all these numbers by 1, it's not going to change them. So that was easy. We divided them all by 1. Great, they all stayed the same. Okay. The second thing we would do is we take this c, and we're going to move it over to the right-hand side. All right. If I take that c and move it over, so I'm going to subtract 2, we get x squared minus 4x equals negative 2. All right, and I intentionally left that blank right there, that little space, that little opening there. All right, we'll put a line under it. All right, so now what I'm going to do there, kind of define my new c, so I'll put that over here, to find my new c. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to take that b, that negative 4, okay? So c equals b divided by 2, and then squared. So for us here, that's negative 4 divided by 2 squared. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. So we have negative 2 squared, which equals 4. Okay, so now I'm going to take that 4 and I'm going to put that here. That's positive 4. I added 4. All right, but now what I just did, I just made this equation unbalanced. It's like a scale. Okay, scale has to stay balanced on both sides. I just made it unbalanced. I added 4 pounds, we could say, to the left side of the scale. Well, I need to add the same 4 pounds to the right-hand side of the scale to rebalance it. So I do that, and I get x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 2. Negative 2 plus 4 gives me a positive 2 on the right. Okay? All right, so now I've rebalanced. Now I can factor this left-hand side. So if we draw our box here, x squared up here, 4 down here, we know x and x gives me x squared. It's a positive 4 in the bottom right-hand corner, so my signs have to be the same, but it's a negative 4x in the middle, so these both need to be negative. Okay, I know I want them to be the same, because that's the only way I'm going to get my perfect square. So we have x minus 2 squared. Let me fill in these other ones here. Negative 2x, negative 2x. And that gives me my negative 4x. All right, so again, my factors are x minus 2 and x minus 2, which is x minus 2 squared equals 2. Now I can take that square root of both sides. All right, on the left, x minus 2 squared, the square root of that is just x minus 2. Now this part's a little tricky. So square root of 2. That is not a perfect square. I can't take the square root of that and just get a whole number. Right? It would be some ugly, it's actually a irrational number, a decimal that would keep going on and on forever. So I know I want my plus and minus, because I would get a positive or a negative here. But since this would not give me a whole number, we're just going to leave it as the square root of 2. All right? And that's okay. Now I can split this up into 2. I get x minus 2 equals the positive square root of 2. X minus 2 equals the negative square root of 2. All right, I will add 2 to both sides to solve both of these equations. Square root of 2 and 2 are not like terms, so we cannot put them together. So we get 2 plus the square root of 2. Over here, I add 2 to both sides. And I get x equals 2 minus the square root of 2. So my two answers here, 2 plus the square root of 2, and 2 minus the square root of 2. Now, I could put these two things in Desmos, see what the decimal equivalent is of that, and compare that with this quadratic up here in standard form, x squared minus 4x plus 2 equals 0. Put that into Desmos, and I could compare those roots with these two answers. And I could see that they are the same. But if it wants an exact answer, like on our air test, if they want an exact answer, these are the answers that they are looking for here, right? Not a long, non-terminating decimal answer. All right, and I'm going to run through just one more example so we can see how this process works. So this one is x squared plus 8x plus 9 equals 0. Again, not factorable, and plugging into Desmos would give me an ugly decimal answer. So I will divide by a, which is 1. Won't change my answer. So we'll move c over to the other side, and I will get x squared plus 8x equals -9. Then I will take the 8, divide it by 2, and square it, and that will give me 16. So that's what I'll add to both sides, plus 16. All right, that will give me x squared plus 8x plus 16 equals 7. I'll use my box here to factor this. X squared 16, so we get x and x, all right, plus 4 and plus 4, so 4x and 4x, which works for my 8x. So my two factors here are going to be x plus 4 and x plus 4, or x plus 4 squared equals 7. Now I'll take the square root of both. Gives me x plus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 7. Now I'll split it up into my 2. X plus 4 equals the square root of 7, and x plus 4 equals negative square root of 7. All right, now to solve both, I want to subtract 4 from both sides. Minus 4, minus 4. So in my first one, I get x equals -4 plus square root of 7. And in my second, I get x equals -4 minus the square root of 7. And those would be my two exact answers there.